The story begins in the middle of a crazy battle, where a team of heroes faces a dragon with absurd strength. Gradually, the beast advances and ends up injuring one of Denny's allies. Without thinking twice, he uses his healing ability, but notices on the faces of some colleagues emotions far from nobility. You can feel the envy and irritation, almost written all over them. At a decisive moment, a member of the group lands a direct hit on the dragon's eye, opening the path to victory. The blonde warrior takes the chance to remind everyone that they are from the Silver Wing, the strongest group on the planet. According to him, losing is not an option. A few days later, the same guy, called Vigo, leader of the group and level 99 adventurer, calls everyone for a tense meeting. He points to Denny as the only one responsible for the failure of the last mission. According to him, if Denny had not used his ability called Terrifying Voice, the dragon would not have escaped. For Vigo, this power ruined everything. Denny tries to explain, saying he only used the ability because he was instructed by Vigo. But the blonde denies it immediately and reinforces the accusation. Denny would have acted on his own, maybe even with the intention of sabotaging the team. He even suggests that Denny might be a spy infiltrated from another adventurer group. And with that, the sentence is given. Denny is out of the guild, expelled for good. Not understanding anything, the boy tries to process what happened. Some colleagues seem to disagree, but no one says anything directly. Denny accepts the expulsion with dignity. If they don't want him there, he won't force it either. But Vigo is not done yet. He says that a cook like Denny should never have joined such an elite group. That hits Denny hard. He asks if there is any problem with being a cook. Vigo replies that the Silver Wing is made for warriors, mages, and swordsmen, combat specialists. Even with all the experience, accepting Denny would have been a mistake. The atmosphere heats up, but Denny remains firm. If that was their mindset, then there was nothing else to do. Determined, he leaves the capital. On the way, unintentionally, he disturbs a little girl and her balloon flies away. Denny makes a great effort to recover it, jumps twice until he catches it. He succeeds, and even tells her to never give up on what is important. For him, that phrase carries an even greater weight. Denny also has something essential in life and understands he can no longer give it up. Vigo watches the scene from afar, seeming satisfied as if everything was already planned. When Denny is about to leave, a redhead named Katie runs up to him, wanting to know why he was expelled. She is clearly upset and reminds him that without him, no one will know how to make potions, take care of alchemy, or cook like he did. The group's quality of life will plummet. Denny tries to calm her down, saying other people master those functions. But Katie insists, since he joined, dungeon performance improved a lot, and now the group is top worldwide. She knows they have no idea how much Denny has protected everyone until now. Without him, everything will change. She begs him to stay or everything could go wrong. Even so, Denny is not shaken. He says the past is behind and there is no way back. Katie tries once more, asking him to at least prepare dinner today and some meals. For Denny, this only shows that their view of him never changed. It was as if everything he did boiled down to cooking. Katie, still upset, asks what he will do now. Denny answers that he wants to open a restaurant. Even so, she insists he doesn't go. As sub-captain, she even tries to give an order, but he has already decided. Denny knows Vigo likes her, and that keeping in touch now would be a mistake. The truth is that his phase as an adventurer is over, but his new journey as a chef is just beginning. Sometime later, far away, Denny finds in a store a magical item that preserves food without needing ice. Basically, a freezer. He gets excited, already imagining how useful it could be in the restaurant he wants to open. But suddenly he remembers a book he had read about culinary business. The author talked about the risks of investing heavily right at the start. Thinking better, Denny decides to set the item aside and use ice magic anyway. He feels he made the right choice. From then on, he resolves to follow strictly the advice of the book, How to Open a Restaurant, a guide for ex-adventurers. A very specific title that grabs his attention. The first step, according to the manual, is to find a cheap and abandoned property to renovate. Then, it's time to close deals with suppliers and secure the utensils. For Denny, all of this is electrifying. Each step brings him closer to the new dream. But the next challenge is tense. No one runs a restaurant alone. A team is needed to handle the customers. And on the street, he hears a guy announcing someone as if she were merchandise. A girl who, according to him, was from a noble family that was exiled. The scene is revolting. Denny realizes that because she comes from noble blood, she has become a target for dangerous people. He feels like intervening, but knows he can't get involved in everything he sees wrong. Living like that would be impossible. Until he looks into her eyes. Something in that gaze stirs an old memory, a feeling he's had before. The auction begins and the bids rise fast. Someone offers 800,000 mihos, the local currency. Without thinking, Denny bids 1 million. But the same guy from the previous store covers with 1.5 million. From the guy's look, Denny sees he can't leave the girl in his hands. So, he offers 2 million. Another one immediately bids 3. The dispute continues and Denny realizes he is almost burning through all his savings. In the end, he wins. Now he has a new companion. He takes the girl to get ready, doing what he can to help her. The change in her look is visible, but the emptiness in her eyes remains. Later, while walking together, Denny asks her to stay close, otherwise she might get lost. It doesn't take long and she really lags behind. A cart almost runs her over. She bumps into several people and suddenly comes face to face with someone who brings up bad memories. She freezes, lost in thought. Fortunately, Denny finds her and apologizes for walking too fast. Now he promises to walk beside her. As soon as they enter a store, she asks why he bought her. Denny, a bit shy, answers that it was just because something in her made him remember something old, nothing more than that. He asks her name, or what he could call her for now. The answer surprises him. She says he can call her slave if he wants. Denny, of course, does not accept that. He decides to call it Atelier. Then she suggests he chooses a name. He introduces himself as Denny. She asks what he wants her to do, and he answers that, for now, nothing. He says she can use the second floor as she wants, and if she wants to leave, that's fine too. The choice is all hers. She is free now. That leaves her speechless, but also very hungry. Denny realizes it's the perfect moment to show a bit of what he knows. He decides to prepare something with eggs. The coolest thing is seeing how he mixes magic with the food preparation. That speeds everything up. You can tell Denny really knows his stuff because just from the smell you already want to eat. Lyre feels like she's on cloud 9. She probably even dozed off a little. But after a while, he announces the meal is ready, and she can eat as much as she wants. On the first bite, the impact is immediate. The flavor surprises so much that she starts devouring, amazed. And who wouldn't understand that? A well-made fried rice dish can be irresistible. What no one expected was to see her break down in tears. Denny, not understanding what's behind that crying, chooses to respect her silence. If she doesn't want to talk, he won't force it, even though he thinks she went through something horrible. Even if he thinks everything is lost for her, Denny believes a good meal can still make a difference. And seeing her enjoy every bite, even through tears, makes his heart feel light. At one point, he asks how she is. She sighs, surprised that he used her name. It catches her off guard. Later, he praises the way she set the table, saying she did a great job. He also comments that he bought that item just to make everything look nicer. Over time, we see how Atelier becomes part of Denny's routine. She helps prepare the food, takes care of the shop, goes shopping. In short, she participates in everything until the last details are ready. Denny gets so excited that he gives her a gentle fist bump, and even shy from not being very skilled, she returns it. You can see that both have changed a lot since the beginning. The next morning, Denny's restaurant finally opens its doors. The name? Adventurer's Restaurant. Stylish, no doubt. Denny tells the girl that she will be the face of the business and will have to work hard. She accepts the challenge calmly. Everything is ready. Menus arranged, water served, tables shining, ingredients organized. Now only one thing is missing: welcoming the first customer. Denny is so confident he believes this first client will enjoy the seasoning so much that they'll end up showing up 3 times a day. And of course, that's what he hopes. After all, he needs to recover what he invested and is taking everything very seriously. And it doesn't take long. The first customer arrives, a man with a striking appearance who will surely be remembered as the beginning of everything, a debut no one can fault. As soon as he received them, Dennis realized he was facing someone wearing a gleaming armor, and he had no idea how to greet such an imposing figure. He then remembered a manual he had read about opening a restaurant aimed at former adventurers. It said that some customers prefer silence and tranquility, and that the best thing to do was to respect that. His mission was to ensure a welcoming experience. With kindness, he asked the newly arrived person to choose any table and requested that the waitress bring a glass of water. As soon as she settled in and immersed herself in the menu, Dennis watched her attentively. In his mind, he already knew exactly which dish he would prepare. It was a special moment, his first customer, an occasion worthy of celebration. However, there was something in the girl's silence that confused him. She said nothing, but Dennis soon realized that her concern was money, or rather the lack thereof. He then decided to prepare a katsudon. The young woman, terrified, began to protest, claiming she would have no way to pay. Even so, Dennis insisted that she would eat for free. To him, there was no other choice. It was the first person to enter his restaurant. There was also a curiosity in the air. He swore he was serving a man until he noticed it was a woman. While preparing the dish, she revealed that she had been expelled from her group for being a woman. They said that swordsmen should be men. Dennis did not agree with that at all. To him, talent and courage had no gender. He said that sooner or later, she would find a group that accepted her. She admitted that she was still a low level, but she was already at 23. Dennis thought that was excellent, more than enough to prove her competence. What truly excited her was hearing that the vice captain of the Silver Wing was a legendary swordswoman. The famous Crimson Swift Sword. Known for starting every battle with a critical strike, she was a reference among warriors. Knowing this rekindled the girl's hope, who felt inspired to keep fighting. Dennis knew this heroine well and noticed in his customer the same fierce spirit. For a long time, she tried to hide the fact that she was a woman to manage to join a group. But Dennis knew, no one can remain silent forever among companions. Eventually, something shows. She began to cry, desperate from the lack of resources and the burden she carried. Dennis approached and asked her to look at the finished dish. Her eyes sparkled, but she insisted, "I can't pay." He, with a silent smile, assured that he didn't care. He just wanted to see her eat. When she tasted the meal, she was amazed by the flavor. It was as if it were the last dish of her life. She enjoyed it intensely, savoring every little piece. At the end, she thanked him emotionally. Dennis was satisfied and hoped she would become a loyal customer. But she explained that she would only return when she found a group that accepted women. That saddened Dennis. He then determined to help her. He began asking his customers if any of them were looking for someone with the skills of that young warrior. He used to be helpful. The problem was keeping in contact. He hoped she would return to eat there until her destiny sorted itself out. Over time, the restaurant gained fame and began to attract adventurers of all kinds. The food was so delicious it brought tears. The little girl who served the tables was a delight, and the atmosphere of the place was welcoming. Dennis praised Atelier for the great job, but his thoughts soon returned to the swordswoman, and his chest tightened. One day, Dennis saw a group of adventurers and asked if they were recruiting. He said that there was a skilled swordswoman with a captivating personality looking for a group, and asked if they could recruit her. Everyone thought it was an excellent idea. After all, the group was lacking offensive power, and that was quite a problem. When evening fell over the city, the girl returned to the restaurant, radiant upon discovering that Dennis had found a group for her. She promised she would repay him as soon as she received her first payment. Even with the cheerful atmosphere, Dennis remained uneasy, and she noticed. He asked if she didn't think she was accepting everything too quickly, without reflecting. But she didn't give it much importance. For her, the choice was hers, and that was that. After the meal, she noted that the flavor of the food continued to be as amazing as ever. She knew she would have to earn a lot of money to repay everything Dennis was doing. Days passed, and the restaurant began to attract more and more patrons. Whoever came in left satisfied. At the end of one of those days, 2 girls arrived and ordered food. As soon as they started eating, they didn't spare praise. It was all delicious. Dennis asked Atelier to close the curtains, since they would be the last customers of the day. However, their conversation caught his attention. They were commenting on a group of adventurers that invited women for missions, but committed atrocities in the depths of dungeons. One of them wondered why those men were not in prison. The answer was grim. They took the victims so far down that they couldn't return on their own. After their perverse acts, they abandoned them and moved on to another city. The 2 knew they needed to always be alert to this type of threat. Dennis remembered the group that had passed through his restaurant and hoped it wasn't the same one. The next day, Henrietta introduced herself to the new group. She was received with friendliness by everyone. As they walked through the forest, she asked what the plan for that day would be. The leader replied that they would do just a simple collection mission. They would go to the dungeon, get some items, and return. Although she found it a bit vague, she decided not to question it and followed the arrangement. Upon reaching the depths of the dungeon, Henrietta defeated all the monsters with ease. The group began to praise her, saying she was amazing. They wanted to go further, face even more dangerous creatures. Henrietta was touched. She had never been treated with so much respect. They always saw her as useless for being a woman. But with this group, she felt hope. She thought that, finally, things were falling into place. Even so, something about the members sounded strange. Later, when they were at an even deeper point, a monster appeared and defeated all the others with ease. She continued defeating all the monsters alone, until at one point, Henrietta became very tired and asked how far they would go. They told her to calm down, that they were almost there. After a bit more time, they found what they were looking for, the item they wanted to collect. Suddenly, Henrietta fainted and fell to the dungeon floor. One of the men approached and applied a shock to her. They began to laugh, mocking her. They said she had been useful, but she was a fool. It was enough flattery to get her excited. They commented that female swordsmen were perfect, impulsive, and easy to deceive. Henrietta realized she needed to get out of there as soon as possible. They laughed, saying they would have fun with her and then let her go. At that moment, she remembered Dennis's words. If she had been more cautious from the start, maybe she wouldn't be in that situation. As they began to remove her clothes, she screamed for help, but they were so deep that no one could hear. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed through the dungeon. One of the men asked what it was. At that exact moment, the group's leader was thrown far away by a violent blow. Dennis appeared, wearing a bread bag on his head as a mask. The men stood stunned, not knowing what kind of creature they were facing. Some speculated it could be the cook from the restaurant where they had eaten days earlier. They even tried to attack him, but nothing had any effect. Dennis was absurdly strong. His level was light years above the others. Lying on the ground, Henrietta wondered who that mysterious figure was. Deep down, she knew. It could only be Dennis protecting her. At dusk, she returns to the restaurant and decides to talk to him. She tells everything that happened, every dark detail. She says that upon regaining consciousness, she was lying on the guild headquarters. A strong man, muscular and full of knives, had been the one who helped her. The criminals were all captured and handed over to the authorities. The investigation revealed they belonged to a group of bandits wanted for several crimes. Everything seemed delirious, as if it had come out of a nightmare. But it was real. The lesson was clear. It was necessary to be more cautious when trusting new companions. Dennis also felt guilty. He thought he should have investigated better before recommending them, but she soon interrupted him. He only wanted to help her find a group. It wasn't his obligation to foresee that. Suddenly, the silence between them is broken by an unmistakable sound, the rumble of her stomach. Dennis smiles and asks what she wants to eat, even knowing she still didn't have a dime in her pocket. He insists she choose anything. When she places the order, he realizes it's an expensive dish, but Dennis doesn't even blink. He goes straight to the kitchen and starts preparing the meal with the same care as always. He was about to close the restaurant for the day when, suddenly, 2 new customers enter. He changes his mind on the spot and decides to close later. The girls complain that he should have opened earlier. Dennis gives a funny excuse. He was busy watching someone's back. Henrietta, upon hearing this, realizes immediately he was responsible for saving her in the dungeon. She wants to say something, to tell him she knows the truth, but more people start coming in and she ends up staying silent. The next day, Henrietta returns to the restaurant, carrying in her heart the desire to talk about the man who saved her from a dark moment. Her words tremble with emotion, but Dennis, focused behind the counter, seems not to grasp the depth of the story. In a direct tone, he asks what she wants to eat today. Henrietta mentions a refined dish, and Dennis, without hesitation, begins to prepare it. While he works, he watches her with curiosity and asks why she insists on hiding who she really is to fit into a group. For him, true strength lies in embracing one's essence, without masks. The ramen arrives at the table, its hot steam filling the air. Henrietta, with her stomach growling, feels the aroma awaken her hunger, but Dennis's words echo more deeply in her soul. Determined, she stands up and runs to the corner of the restaurant. Without hesitation, she begins to shed the layers that conceal her true identity, as if breaking chains. She wants everyone to see. She is a woman, not just on the outside, but in her deepest essence. Henrietta understands at last that the fear of making mistakes had distanced her from herself. Instead of hiding, she chooses the courage to be authentic. The adorable Atelier watches her with gentle eyes and says she looks radiant. These words rekindle Henrietta's confidence, touching her deeply. Tasting the ramen, the flavor comforts her. But it is the conversation with Dennis that leaves a true mark. He, however, reminds her, in a serious tone, that bills are piling up, and she will need to find a job to pay them off. A chill runs down Henrietta's spine when she learns that Dennis keeps track of every expense. Suddenly, a young man enters the restaurant. Dennis greets him courteously, but he ignores it, grabbing the menu with a demanding look. He asks what the tastiest dish in the place is. Dennis, patient, says that all dishes have their value, but the young man dismisses the answer, finding it vague. He suggests a rice dish, but the young man refuses, saying he's not in the mood. Henrietta, trying to help, recommends noodles, but he rejects it, claiming it's too heavy. Each suggestion is met with criticism, and the tension in the air intensifies. Dennis feels irritation growing, but Henrietta grabs his arm, asking him to hold back. She realizes that the young man is lost in his own unrest, perhaps searching for something greater. Discreetly, Atelier, with all her cuteness, suggests fried rice, and the boy, a little embarrassed, accepts the recommendation. The atmosphere warms up, and Dennis rushes to prepare the dish. When the fried rice arrives, the young man is impressed by its presentation. Upon tasting it, his eyes light up, and he murmurs that it's exceptional. Dennis, noticing a shadow in the young man's gaze, asks if something is bothering him. He hesitates, as if carrying an invisible burden, and initially denies it, saying he just came to eat. But after a moment, the words begin to slip out. With frustration, he confesses that the people around him don't meet his expectations. For him, they lack ambition, depth. The other customers exchange looks, expecting something more serious, but he continues, saying that the mentalities around him are limited, tied to small goals. Henrietta watches in silence, while Dennis asks if the young man reflects on the weight of his words. He, exalted, says he despises the lack of ambition, especially among the adventurers he tried to form a group with. For him, being an adventurer is to challenge the unknown, to explore beyond limits. But his former companions were content with simple missions, lacking a vision of greatness. His indignation grows as he reveals he was unceremoniously expelled from the group, abandoned by those who didn't share his dreams. The young man, now introduced as Vivia, continues speaking with fervor. He believes that one day he will reach the top, that he will join the legendary Silverwing and become an incomparable mage. Dennis, in a calm tone, warns him not to isolate himself in his pursuit of greatness, reminding him that adventurers find strength in the bonds with their group. Vivia, confident, replies that perhaps there is no group capable of keeping up with him. As he stands up, he pays the exact amount for the dish and, in a firm tone, introduces himself as Vivia. Before leaving, he promises to return, perhaps ordering the same shrimp fried rice. Dennis, perplexed, murmurs to Henrietta that his restaurant seems to attract only restless dreamers. Days later, Vivia reappears, bringing new stories. He says he decided to join the Night Mist Troupe, the strongest group in town. Dennis sincerely congratulates him, wishing him success. Vivia, full of energy, says his popularity comes from his advanced techniques, although he still needs to put them into practice. For him, levels will come with time. What matters is his potential. Dennis, noticing his youth and enthusiasm, just agrees, hoping he finds balance. While eating, Vivia praises the flavor of the dish, saying it's even better. He dreams of the day when, upon joining the Silver Wing, he will earn a grand title. maybe Shadow Warlock. Dennis, in turn, rolls his eyes at the memory of his own nickname, Legendary Fried Rice, which deeply annoys him. Silently, he acknowledges that Vivia's ambition, though intense, has something inspiring about it. The next day, Vivia returns to the restaurant full of confidence. He tells Dennis that if he finds a group that trains him with dedication, he could become a respected adventurer. Curious, Dennis asks what his first mission will be. Vivia replies that he will start tomorrow, collecting rare synthesis materials. Dennis, surprised, checks his level. 17. It's impressive for his age, but insufficient for the 5th floor, where the ideal is level 30 or higher. He asks if Vivia isn't taking too much of a risk. Vivia, surprised that Dennis knows the depth of the 5th floor, assures him everything is under control, as he will have the support of an elite group. Dennis, however, is suspicious. Vivia mentioned mastering advanced techniques, but he suspects the young man has only studied theory from books with no real practice. An adventurer's level reflects the quality and precision of their skills, which become more consistent over time. If Vivia truly mastered such complex techniques, his level should be higher. Vivia, in turn, argues that people only see what they expect of him and implies that Dennis, a simple cook, would never understand the world of dungeons. Dennis does not reveal that he was once an adventurer and explored up to the 37th floor. Instead, he just agrees, keeping his reservations. Vivia insists everything will work out with the support of his high-level group. Later, however, Dennis can't shake the worry. He knows Vivia must already be on the 5th floor and wonders if he should have warned him more strongly. But the rule among adventurers is clear. No one is stopped from following their path. Atelier, beside him, shares the same unease. Suddenly, a group of adventurers passes by Dennis, murmuring that sending Vivia to the 5th floor was cruel. They mention that the group leader is ruthless. Without a second thought, Dennis confronts them in a nearby alley. Irritated, they introduce themselves as members of the Night Mist Troop, but Dennis, with surprising skill, defeats them effortlessly. Upon returning, he decides to check if Vivia is okay. Atelier, with a worried look, touches his hand in a gesture of support, as if they were father and daughter, and asks him to be careful. The scene shifts to Vivia, running desperately as goblins chase him. Flashbacks reveal that his group forced him to face the monsters alone on the 5th floor as a test to prove his worth. Now, in the present, he struggles to escape, knowing he must return to the 3rd floor. In a moment of panic, his foot gets caught in a strange vine. Desperate, he tries to remember the spells he studied, but his mind freezes. He rewrote the incantations so many times, convinced he had mastered them, but now, under pressure, everything slips away. If he doesn't break free, the goblins will find him. Suddenly, a calm voice guides him, teaching him the steps of a spell. Vivia performs it and manages to hide. The goblins run past, not noticing him. Relieved, he thanks his savior, impressed that she used an ancient magic he didn't know. The girl, who introduces herself as Cynthia, warns that they are not safe yet and need to find a way out. Vivia, still shaken, asks why Cynthia is there. She says, with a tone of sadness, that she was abandoned by her group. After falling into a trap while fleeing from monsters, no one came back to help her. They all left her behind. Vivia feels a weight in his chest upon hearing the story. He confesses that he never mastered the fundamentals of magic either, and always caused problems for the groups he joined. Cynthia, surprised, says she doesn't believe Vivia has a bad personality. Vivia retorts that Cynthia knows nothing about his life, but the girl responds in the same tone, pointing out that Vivia doesn't know her either. This dialogue, so honest, makes Vivia feel seen for the first time. For the first time, he speaks openly, without filters, and it relieves him. Determined, Vivia decides that he will be the bait so Cynthia can escape. He realizes that without the girl's help, he wouldn't be alive. For the first time, he feels a genuine urge to act for someone else. Reflecting, he realizes that he has always lived selfishly, looking down on others and placing himself above them. But now, facing Cynthia, he finds a greater purpose. With his heart racing, Vivia decides to draw the goblin's attention to give Cynthia a chance to flee. He runs, shouting to attract the monsters, and tries to cast a spell. But to his despair, the magic fails, leaving him exposed to danger. Just as the goblins approach, ready to attack, a figure emerges from the darkness of the 5th floor. Stones rise from the ground, moved by powerful magic, and scatter the monsters with precision. It's Dennis. Vivia, stunned, initially mistakes him for a threat and tries to cast a spell, but his magic fails again. Dennis, with a firm gesture, gives him a strong smack on the head, snapping him back. "It's me, Vivia. Let's get out of here now," he says, his voice full of urgency. Vivia hesitates, panting, and insists that there's another person trapped, Cynthia. Dennis follows him to the place where Vivia believes Cynthia is, but when they arrive, they find only a skeleton, wrapped in webs of dry vines. He asks in a grave tone if this is what Vivia wanted to show him. The silence between them is heavy. Shocked, they decide to seek answers at the Adventurers Guild. There, they discover a devastating truth. Cynthia disappeared 13 years ago on that same 5th floor. After being separated from her group, she was never seen again. The guild believes she perished there, alone, in the depths of the dungeon. Under the gray sky, Vivia and Dennis walk to the cemetery, where a simple headstone marks Cynthia's name. In silence, they pay their respects. Dennis, with a distant look, mentions an old legend among adventurers. They say that those who die in dungeons remain as spirits, guiding others in moments of despair. Vivia, with tears streaming down his face, clenches his fists and vows, with fierce determination, that he will become the greatest mage in the world, honoring Cynthia's memory. His voice trembles but carries an unbreakable promise. As they leave the cemetery, Dennis places his hand on Vivia's shoulder and invites him to eat something at the restaurant. He accepts, still shaken, but grateful for the company. As they walk, Dennis encourages him not to let sadness consume him. Suddenly, Dennis feels a faint pulse of magic emanating from Vivia, as if something inside him has begun to awaken. A soft narration echoes. In ancient times, when people experienced the inexplicable, something that touched their souls and revealed their hearts, they called it magic. If that is true, Cynthia was in fact a mage, and her presence remains even if only in spirit, bidding Vivia farewell with a breath of hope. Elsewhere, a mysterious figure appears, standing atop a clock tower under the twilight light. Her eyes fix on the horizon, as if trying to unravel the threads that weave destinies together. She murmurs, almost to herself, a silent question. How did it all come to this? Bachel, a young woman with an exhausted gaze, wondered why everything had to end like this, with such weight on her chest. The boss, with a sharp voice, threw it in her face. How long are you going to take to sort out these reports? It's looking like eternity. She, swallowing the lump in her throat, murmured an, I'm sorry. But the man, already boiling with rage, retorted, Is that all you know? Saying sorry? His words hurt like a knife. Bachel endured the abuse with nowhere to run, trying to keep her head on straight. Life went on heavy, and she bent over backward to balance the bills, but no matter how hard she tried, the numbers seemed to mock her. To make matters worse, she spent sleepless nights, staying up until 3 in the morning to handle work tasks. Exhausted, her stomach growling with hunger, she hadn't even eaten properly. Famished and downcast, Bachel decided to try her luck at a new restaurant in town. Arriving there, she was met with the doors nearly closing. What rotten luck, she thought, feeling the day weigh even more. But a little girl with a sweet smile saw her and asked, Are you a customer? There's someone here we need to serve. Dennis, the cook, kind of with no choice, asked her to pick something from the menu. Bachel, without thinking much, ordered the dish of the day. Upon entering, it was as if the world outside stopped. The place was cozy, with a smell of homemade food that embraced you. She looked around, imagining that the others there must be regular customers, something she couldn't afford, since her days off were just bed and catching up on sleep with no friends to visit. When the food arrived, Bachel was jaw-dropped. It was the most beautiful dish she'd ever seen. Upon taking the first forkful, it was as if the world made sense again. The taste was indescribable, an explosion of happiness on the palate. Henrietta, one of the people there, smiled and said, Everything here is delicious. You need to try the Vitra Katsudon or the Wizard's Ramen. They're out of this world. Bachel was surprised by so much enthusiasm. Vivia, the blonde, explained that Henrietta was the oldest customer, practically the queen of the restaurant. But Dennis, in a playful tone, corrected, Oldest nothing. She's the queen of eating for free. She always skips the bill and takes off. Henrietta laughed, saying Vivia also didn't pay, but Dennis assured that he covered everything she consumed. In the midst of that delightful confusion, Bachel couldn't hold a smile, but, without realizing it, felt her eyes fill with tears. Sorry, my bad, she said, trying to disguise it. Inside, she thought, here there was amazing food, a light atmosphere, and people who seemed real. But in her life, it was all anger, abuse, and comments that cut the soul. She worked until the sun rose, almost every day, carrying the weight of expectations. Since childhood, her village believed in her, saving every little coin so she could travel, learn magic, and become an extraordinary mage, and she succeeded. She secured a job in the city's largest adventurers guild, a chance to make a living and honor the people's trust. But being exploited at work was draining her strength. And unfortunately, reality felt like a nightmare again. Henrietta, worried, asked if she was okay. Dennis looked at Vivia, wanting to know if she knew the girl, but Vivia denied it. Henrietta insisted with Dennis, Can't you do something for her? He, with a sigh, replied, I'm just a cook. She's going to have to sort her own problems out. Meanwhile, Bachel's alarm clock rang in the middle of the night, but she couldn't either sleep or get up. She ended up passing out from exhaustion, and when she woke up, it was already late. Rushing to work, she arrived late and got a heavy scolding. Later, in a dungeon, her partner was attacked by a monster. Bachel, heart in hand, used a magical gust to save him, Even though she asked if he was okay, the guy pushed her with contempt, as if she were the problem. On the way back to the city, Bachel walked with her heart tight, thinking about how others threw all the blame on her, saying she liked to humiliate. Nearby, Vivia and Henrietta were talking about the menu, laughing and planning what to order. When they saw Bachel, they couldn't ignore the sadness on her face. Vivia, with a knot in her chest, said, "This looks serious." Henrietta, without thinking twice, jumped to catch Bachel, who had thrown herself from the tower. Vivia used a palm spell to cushion the fall. Together, they ran Bachel back to the restaurant. Dennis, seeing her, became worried. Could it be something with the heart? But deep down, everyone knew the weight she carried was more emotional than anything else. Vivia and Henrietta, concerned, asked Dennis if there was any way to help Bachel recover. He, thoughtful, replied, "For now, a good rest might give her a boost. She needs some time to breathe." Vivia, in a serious tone, reminded, "She's trapped in a dark fog, Dennis. Those guys who boss her around are a huge problem." Dennis promised he'd find a way to talk to them. That night, the men appeared at the restaurant. Hopper, the boss, arrived with a half-forced apology. "I heard one of mine is causing trouble." But Dennis bluntly retorted, "Trouble? You owe apologies after how you treat Bachel." Hopper, trying to change the subject, praised the food at the place, but Dennis realized he wasn't lowering his guard. That guy was level 51, way beyond what a common adventurer would need. Hopper wanted to talk about Bachel, but Dennis was firm. "She's not in condition to work now. She needs care, needs to recover." Hopper, in a cold tone, said that was impossible and that it was better to hand her over to them to resolve. Worse, they showed the contract Bachel signed, and Dennis was stunned. It was an absurd document, full of clauses that chained the girl to inhuman work. "This isn't fair. No one can bear such weight alone," exclaimed Dennis. Hopper shrugged. "This is how our group works." Dennis retorted, "An adventurer can join and leave a group whenever they want, that's law." But Hopper insisted it wasn't his decision. Tired, Dennis exploded. "You aren't adventurers, you're heartless exploiters." Hopper, with a threatening look, warned, "We are the law here. If you keep messing with Bachel, you'll regret it. Last warning." Meanwhile, Bachel, still stunned, didn't understand why she was saved. "If I were better, everything would be different," she murmured, eyes full of tears. Atelier, who was there, looked at her with empathy. "I understand you, you know? I've been through something like this. I lost everything, was exiled, sold as a slave. My will to live disappeared. But then someone showed up and changed everything. Today, I live happily." She gave a gentle smile. "Eat something delicious first, Bachel. Then think calmly. I know how it is, and whatever choice you make, I'll understand. But I'll tell you one thing, life has its good sides even when everything is gray." Back at the restaurant, Dennis faced Hopper. "What do you think you are? The king of the city?" Hopper laughed dryly. "We run things here because we're the strongest. Plain and simple." He looked the restaurant over from top to bottom. Small place. Would catch fire easily, right? Tension rose, and Dennis was at his limit when Kate entered, surprised by the cozy atmosphere of the restaurant. "Wow, what a lovely little place," she said, but soon cut Dennis off, who tried to explain. "I'm in the middle of a serious conversation here." Kate impatiently retorted, "Serious? I came from the capital. I'm not in the mood to wait. I want to eat now." Hopper looked confused until noticing her crimson armor, the red swords and hair that looked like it was on fire. "It's her, the vice captain of the Silver Wings," he thought, recognizing the embroidery on her back. Dennis asked Kate to wait a second and returned to Hopper. "Free Bachel from that group, now." Kate, unaware of the tension, clung to Vivia and asked who that beautiful little girl was. Dennis said it wasn't a little girl, but a boy. Vivia, curious, asked Kate, "What's your thing with Dennis?" Kate, a bit irritated, replied, "You don't know? He never told?" And before Dennis could stop her, she shouted, "Dennis used to be with the Silver Wings, my ex-partner." Silence fell like a bomb. Hopper, now paler, didn't want trouble with someone of that level. After a moment of tension, he ordered one of the men, "Burn that contract, now," and left without looking back. Kate, frustrated, grumbled, "I wanted some action. I hate when they invade my turf." Dennis laughed, "Your turf? This restaurant is mine." As he hadn't seen Kate in ages, he asked, "What do you want to eat?" Atelier, the little girl, took the opportunity to order the special dish of the day for Bachel. When the food arrived, Kate attacked the plate with gusto, while Bachel watched, still processing everything. The night finally ended in peace, with the weight on Bachel's chest a little lighter. On the next day, at the Silver Wing headquarters, Katie entered and soon heard the others whispering about the captain's bad mood in recent times. Since the team began to struggle with the new missions, Vigor seemed like a ticking time bomb. Suddenly, she bumped into Vigor himself, who wore a sullen face. Without beating around the bush, he told the two nearby members to leave and asked in a sharp tone what Katie had gone to do with Dennis. He said that a little bird had told him. She laughed, saying that his little bird was quite fast, and dodged the question, saying she only went to eat Dennis's food after a long time. But the truth was different. After savoring the dish of the day, Katie tried to convince Dennis to return to the Silver Wing because the team was collapsing without him. Dennis, however, was categorical. He loved the new life, even with the strange customers, and enjoyed the tranquility of no longer being an adventurer. When Katie insisted, telling how hard things were for Vigor and the group, he only reinforced that he had always been a cook, not a hero. Sad, Katie tried to persuade Vigor to call Dennis back, but the captain cut her off immediately, telling her to forget the subject. She still argued, reminding how everything flowed well with Dennis on the team, but Vigor simply turned his back and walked away. Meanwhile, Dennis's restaurant was busier than ever. Henrietta, observing the movement, said it made sense. The food was too good, and everyone loves good food. Suddenly, Vivia was surprised to see Bachel there, who thanked for the visit and revealed that she now lived in the restaurant. Henrietta, worried, advised Bachel to take it easy, but she replied that remaining idle made her anxious, especially with a cute veteran helping. At that moment, Dennis arrived with the dishes, and Vivia's and Bachel's eyes sparkled as always upon seeing the delights. Henrietta took a bite of the crispy shrimp and exclaimed that this was exactly why the place was always full. Dennis, with a crooked smile, retorted that she was more of a gatecrasher than a loyal customer. Vivia and Bachel were shocked to learn that Henrietta still hadn't paid the bill. She defended herself, saying she was trying to find a job, but life was not helping. Dennis cast a cold look, and she, embarrassed, apologized for stalling. More customers entered, and Vivia asked if Dennis could handle the crowd. He explained that Atelier was helping a lot, and even seemed more upbeat lately. Vivia suggested something good must have happened. Suddenly, a bowl slipped from Dennis's hand, and he asked Vivia to talk on the next day off. Henrietta immediately offered to help, but Dennis flatly refused, making her even more curious about the discussion. That night, Henrietta felt restless. Taking a shower in a public bathroom because she was broke was humiliating, and Dennis's words about her being a gatecrasher hammered in her mind. Afraid of being kicked out of the restaurant, she decided she needed to take action before it was too late. On Vivia's day off, Dennis finally pulled her into a serious conversation and dropped the bomb. Atelier had a boyfriend. Vivia was dumbfounded, not expecting that. Dennis explained he had been giving her some money, but now the girl disappeared alone. He went crazy with worry until he saw her walking with a guy. Vivia thought it was cool she was making friends, but Dennis slammed the table, saying it was much worse if they were more than friends. When Vivia suggested he ask directly, Dennis turned red and said it would sound weird. Frustrated, he complained that the guy could have at least brought a cookie if he was serious. And he added, half joking, half serious, that he wouldn't let her date just any Larry below level 80. Suddenly, Atelier appeared behind him, tugging his shirt and asking what they were talking about. Dennis almost fell out of his chair. Vivia quickly made up that she was there to learn how to cook, and Dennis gave a discreet thumbs up. Atelier then said she also wanted to learn, which made Dennis completely giddy. He told her to wash her hands and began to teach, showing how cutting onion properly changed the flavor. When she complained that her eyes burned, he panicked and soon taught a trick to relieve it. When Vivia also complained that her eyes burned while cutting onion, Dennis just gave a teasing smile and wished good luck. But with Atelier, he didn't hold back praise when she got the onion cut right, completely proud. Yet when Vivia showed she also did well, Dennis barely glanced and just murmured a, "not bad." While watching Atelier's effort, Dennis drifted into childhood memories, remembering when he asked his master if he was doing well. She, smiling, said he had cheated using an ability. Curious, Dennis wanted to know how she discovered it, and the master answered with a clever look that she always knew what the boy got up to. Back in the present, Atelier poked Dennis, snapping him out of reverie, and confessed somewhat shyly that she had broken an egg by accident. He laughed, unfazed, and started teaching patiently how to crack eggs properly, mix the dough and bread the meat with breadcrumbs. After, they fried the meat together, and soon the crispy brora cutlet was ready. Dennis showered Atelier with compliments, saying she nailed it on her first try. Meanwhile, when Vivia, all proud, showed her cutlet, Dennis only glanced quickly and said okay without enthusiasm. Just then, the city tower bell rang, and Atelier jumped, saying she needed to leave. Dennis asked where she was going, and she, with a little smile, responded only outside, as if he didn't know anything. Vivia, seeing her run out the door, whispered whether she might be going to meet her boyfriend, which almost gave Dennis a breakdown. At that moment, Bachel came out of the room, and Dennis, hurried, told her to finish 2 bowls and then go shopping, because he needed to sort something urgent with Vivia, who clearly was not at all keen to go. Bachel felt insecure, lacking confidence to shop alone. Luckily, Henrietta appeared at the time, all excited, saying that she had taken a test to join an adventurer team. Dennis, without much interest, asked if she could help Bachel with the shopping. Henrietta agreed at once, and Dennis thanked, saying he was counting on them, before running off as if the world were ending, leaving the girls wondering what had happened. In town, Vivia tried to convince Dennis to stop, because seriously, they looked like two stalkers following Atelier. Dennis retorted firmly that he was her guardian. Vivia suggested he simply go talk to her instead of acting like a soap opera detective. Suddenly, Dennis grabbed Vivia's head and pointed to the boy who, according to him, was stringing his girl along. Vivia still tried to calm him, saying he could be just a friend. But when the guy took Atelier to a jewelry store, Dennis freaked out, already imagining her coming out with an engagement ring. Too soon for that. Vivia even suggested they enter the store, but upon seeing Dennis nearly collapse, she had a better idea. Meanwhile, Henrietta sat nearby, looking worried. Bachel asked what was wrong, and she vented that she needed to raise money soon, before Dennis began to hate her. When Bachel asked about payment for the gigs she did, Henrietta explained that it all went to repair equipment and buy healing items, because as a tank she always took hits. The money simply vanished, no matter how hard she worked. She said she was thinking of another way to pay Dennis, and Bachel promised support, which gave her a boost. Suddenly, they heard two guys nearby talking about a rumor. The captain of the Nightfog had been humiliated by a restaurant owner who used to be in the Silver Wing. They wondered if Nightfog would try to get revenge. Meanwhile, Dennis was still confused about Vivia's brilliant plan, which involved a megaphone. Vivia explained that the thing was enchanted with magic to amplify voices at a distance. Dennis still didn't get how that helped, and Vivia, with the air of a smart mage, said that's where her genius came in. After he cast the spell, Atelier's voice echoed through the megaphone. Dennis was impressed, but Vivia admitted, somewhat sheepishly, that he wasn't exactly proud of it. They heard Atelier say she liked it, that she thought it was very cool, and would keep it forever. The two were frozen. But when she said she was happy to have met him, Dennis shouted so loud that an old lady nearby glared. At that exact moment, a thief used wind magic to steal the lady's purse and ran off. Dennis shouted for help, but upon learning it was just a purse, he looked at Vivia and asked for a little magical boost. The blonde thief, laughing at the ease of the theft, looked back and saw a scary guy running with a boy on his shoulders, approaching fast. He was stunned that someone could keep up with his wind magic, and even more when he realized Dennis wasn't using any magic at all. Vivia, out of breath, asked if everyone from Silverwing was that fast, and Dennis, with a sly smile, said he was the fastest because he never skipped leg day. In a dead-end alley, the thief used wind magic to jump to the rooftop, while Dennis climbed with pure brute strength. When Dennis asked if Vivia had any useful spell, the boy cast an enchantment that made Dennis bounce into the air like on a trampoline. The blonde thief, eyes wide with terror, saw Dennis launching into the air like a rocket, almost reaching him. In a desperate move, he launched a surprise wind magic attack just as Dennis was close and fled, yelling arrogantly that he wouldn't be caught so easily with that trick. Dennis, blood boiling, told Vivia to bear down as soon as they landed. Meanwhile, Vivia spotted the girls just ahead, walking down the street. The thief passed by them like lightning, with a smug smile, thinking it was enough to lose them to escape. But, out of nowhere, Henrietta appeared from above, with a serious face that left no room for jokes, and took down the arrogant thief with impressive agility. Dennis arrived shortly after, out of breath, and gave her a pat on the head, praising the well-done job. Later, back at the restaurant, Dennis gathered the girls and dropped the news. Atelier had a boyfriend. Vivia, always the most level-headed, quickly corrected, saying they still weren't sure of that. Henrietta, teasingly, asked if Dennis had been feeling a bit lonely lately, and Bachel, bluntly, confessed that Henrietta was afraid of being expelled from the restaurant. Dennis laughed, assuring he would never ban someone who valued his food as much as she did, but added with a little smile that he might change his mind later. At that moment, Atelier entered silently, with an expression so intense it seemed to carry the world on her shoulders, and surprised Dennis by appearing behind the counter with a small box in her hand. When he opened it, he found a bracelet that, according to Atelier, she bought by saving her entire allowance. Bachel burst out laughing, saying Dennis had completely misunderstood, and Henrietta, without thinking twice, let slip some gossip when Atelier asked what that meant, which almost cost her an eternal banishment. Dennis tried on the bracelet, and seeing him wearing the gift made Atelier beam from ear to ear. Meanwhile, Captain Vigor went to an imposing mansion to meet someone he hadn't seen in a long time.